Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Capital Edge Tip Line. I'm Chad Braley. And this week, we're going to talk about the proposed uniform grants regulations. Um, this is going to be an interesting shift. Obviously, this is proposed, so nothing has actually happened yet. But on May 29th of 2026, OMB is proposing revisions to the federal grant rules in 2 CFR, including Part 200. This proposal is going to move the familiar uniform guidance framework towards a binding government wide uniform grants regulation. Now, the main objectives, obviously, as described by OMB, is improving transparency, accountability, and oversight, clarifying regulatory status, and reducing recipient burden. I think the practical message for recipients is that grant rules may become more centralized, more uniform, and potentially faster to update across agencies. Comments are due by July 13th, and OMB has proposed an October 1st, 2026 effective date for the final rule, which obviously takes effect in the first day of the new government fiscal year. How does this shift, from kind of compliance to strategy, right? Historically, recipient compliance programs focus very heavily on internal controls, allowable costs, audit readiness, performance reporting, etc. The proposed regulation points to a broader oversight model, giving agencies more room to evaluate alignment with agency priorities and national interests. As a result, recipients should be technically compliant but still face increased scrutiny if the program no longer aligns with current federal priorities. Right? So organizations need to be prepared to explain not only the funds were spent properly, but also why the award continues to advance the intended public purpose. So moving forward, right, this also means, and we've seen this obviously since the new administration has taken over, in terms of federal funding, whether that be in contracts and grants, right, it's becoming a lot less predictable. And so one of the major, significant proposed changes is that the broader agency authority to suspend, stop work, or terminate federal financial assistance awards. So greater agency authority challenges the old assumption that an award is relatively stable if the recipient is performing and complying with the rules, right? I have my I have my award, I'm compliant, it's going to continue. But as you know, agency and or administration priorities shift, there's going to be more easier access, I think we should say, to suspend, stop work, and or terminate awards. So the risk here is not just limited to non-compliance; it's also limited to potential funding interruptions that could occur if priorities, program goals, or agency interests change. Right. The practical step, I think, is to build contingency plans before a pause or termination notice creates an urgent cash flow or delivery issue. So, a lot less reliability, if you will, in the duration, right, of the funding and of the awards. One of the other things we want to talk about subawards and subaward administration, and right, and the costs that may face some tighter scrutiny. So the pass-through entities, right, are going to face higher expectations for subrecipient oversight, including risk assessments, monitoring, reporting, and documentation. Right. It's also moving away, which is kind of interesting, from fixed amount subawards and increasing the importance of cost reimbursement style monitoring and support, which is actually the opposite direction that the contracting community is going, where they're trying to shift more towards fixed price contracts and less on cost reimbursement contracts. So, kind of interesting, very divergent shifts, right, between um, 2 CFR 200 and this proposed consolidated grant guidance versus what we're kind of seeing from an agency contract uh, direction, if you will. Um, there's going to be some cost principle changes that may require early approval for things like publication costs, conferences, outreach, public communications, fundraising related costs, and some advertising expenses, things of that nature. And obviously, there's, of course, as has been a major priority with this administration, the restriction of certain DEI related activities. What should you do? Well, obviously, we should comment if you need to comment, right? And that's going to be closing pretty quickly here. Inventory your federal awards, subawards, and grant funded programs to identify where the proposed changes could have the greatest impact, right? We think organizations are going to need to really reassess subrecipient monitoring procedures, agreement language, reporting expectations, documentation standards, and record retention practices, and then evaluate your funding concentration risk and prepare contingency plans, because there is more freedom now for the agencies to pause slash stop work and or terminate some of the awards. So we're going to monitor the process. Obviously, we're going to have a proposed final rule, as they say, hopefully by October 1st, 2026. And we'll certainly be watching it and keep you updated. So until next time, this is Chad Braley with Capital Edge, and hope you enjoyed the tip line. Take care.